Okay. Thank you for joining us. My name is Dominique Brooks. I'm the Ombudsman of the Ombudsman's Office in Atlantic and Cape May County Superior Court. Meet the Court Live is a summer weekly series of webinars via Zoom to inform the public about a variety of court programs, services, and more. The presentation today will provide general information and feature a Q&A at the end. You may submit general non-case specific questions at any point via the Q&A function in your Zoom app, and our speaker will address them at the end as long as time permits. This is a Zoom webinar, so your cameras and microphone will not be usable. Also, please note that this series is a product of the Atlantic and Cape May County vicinage of the Superior Court of New Jersey, and some information may be unique to this vicinage. Be sure to check with your own county vicinage for any information specific to them. Today's presentation will cover Children in Court and Adoption Day and be presented by subject matter expert Daniela Moreno Escobar, a Children in Court team leader. We are hoping you enjoy today's session. Thank you.
Hi, everybody. My name is Daniela Moreno Escobar, and as Dominique said, I'm the team leader for the Children in Court unit in Atlantic County. I'm going to start off with saying that I'm a very fast speaker, but I'm going to try to pace myself because it is being interpreted, but I am normally at 100 miles per minute type of person. So to start off, Children in Court, we use a lot of acronyms. Children in Court itself, we call it the CIC unit usually. In the CIC unit, there are numerous dockets, and there's FC, which is Child Placement Docket, the FN docket, which is the Child Protection Docket, and then FG, the Termination of Parental Rights Docket, FL, which is Kinship Legal Guardianship Docket, we call it KLG, and FA, the Adoption Docket. And in the next slides, I'll explain a little more. So, like I said, a lot of acronyms. Children in Court is the docket where the Division of Child Protection and Permanency, which is DCPMP, which was formerly known as DIFAS, files their complaints. DCPMP must investigate all reports of child abuse and neglect. If they determine that a child has been or is currently in danger of being harmed, they will file a complaint against the parents or caregivers with the family part of the Superior Court. CIC of the family part is required to review the decisions and actions of DCPMP and to oversee the DCPMP cases to ensure the safety and well-being of children. When a complaint is filed by DCPMP, it becomes the responsibility of the family court to determine what is best for the children. So what I do want to clarify when I went over this slide is that not all DCPMP cases will have a litigated case here in the courthouse. There are cases that DCPMP handles solely administratively, or there are cases that they investigate and they decide not to take further, and those also will not be litigated here in the courthouse. Next slide. Dominique is clicking for me. So as far as who is involved in Children in Court cases, we will always have a judge. Right now we have two judges, Judge Coombs and Judge Cunningham. We will always have a Deputy Attorney General, which is similar to, I guess you could say, like a prosecutor. They represent the Division of Child Protection and Permanency. And we have a law guardian, and they represent the minor children, or if there's only one child, and their interest. Then we will have, we call it an OPR attorney. OPR stands for Office of Parental Representation, which is a branch under the Office of the Public Defender. And then we will normally have a DCPMP worker come to court, or sometimes a supervisor, or even a supervisor of a supervisor, which we call a casework suit. Not all cases will have a court-appointed special advocate, which we call CASA. we have way too many acronyms. But if the child is in placement or the children are in placement in that case, we will most likely have a CASA volunteer. Some cases require mediation, and then we have mediators that assist us with those cases. And then currently, neither of our counties has a child placement review board, but we have had those in place previously. We're working on getting those back together. If there's anybody out in the public who is interested, please reach out to us because we're looking for volunteers. And we can do the next slide. This part is a little not as much, I guess, geared towards the public, but it's more so for the court to be on track. There's also a QR code that I think if you scan it, it'll take you to the parent's guidebook and planner. So when a case comes in, we schedule it usually within 21 days. Usually we try more so within like 10 days for what we would call an order to show cause. And then after that initial order to show cause, if the case continues, then within 21 days, we will have it returned for a return order to show cause. And then after that, we will decide whether is a case management conference needed, depending what kind of finding the division is looking for, which is a more complicated part of the case, depending what the division, what type of finding they made against the either the parent or an alleged perpetrator. Then we have to either bring it in for a fact finding, which would be a Title IX, and then or a Title 30 summary hearing, which would be a Title 30. Then after those findings are made, we bring in the case usually every 90 days. And then depending on what kind of case it is, we have to schedule it for a perm hearing. It's actually every 360 days. I just noticed this the other day. But usually we say 365 days because they give us, I think, a 5-day grace period. But every 365 days for a perm hearing, which I think we're going to talk more about perm hearings in a later slide. So here we talk about possible outcomes of children in court cases. Possible results after a fact finding or a Title 30 summary hearing. It could be a dismissal. Your case can be closed. Depending what finding, like I said, was made, services could be ordered. Services can range from a lot of things. It could be parenting classes to substance abuse, inpatient services, outpatient services, even like the division assisting with maybe with bus tickets, or the division even just assisting parents with getting to local resources and things like that. In a stipulation, the defendant would admit to at least one allegation, and services are ordered to address safety issues. We sometimes use mediations, especially when it comes to issues with visitation or issues. It's also a very good space for, let's say, if it is an out-of-home placement case, for the resource parents and the biological parents to sit down and be able to meet and talk about concerns in an even playing field, I guess you could say. Reunification could also occur, which the court determines that it's safe for the children to return home. Possible outcomes after permanency hearing could be, like I just mentioned, reunification with the parents, the child returns home, children return home. Permanent placement with a relative kinship legal guardianship, which is KLG. The relative becomes long-term legal guardian for the child, and they're able to make certain decisions like routine healthcare, emergent healthcare. They're able to apply for a driver's license for the child. They're able to apply to help the child apply to go to college. Independent living for youth 16 years and older, which would be more so like preparing the minor to live on their own, or just individual stabilization, 18 or older, things like that. Another planned permanent living arrangement, or termination of parental rights, which we call TPR. And then the plan for the child would change to adoption. Does DCPMP provide any services? Services to support troubled families living together at home. So like I mentioned earlier, they could range from parenting classes, random urine drug screens, in-home counseling, things like of that nature. There's a lot of services that they could provide. And just because they are providing the services does not mean the case has to be, is litigated, but it would be handled administratively. The cases that are litigated are usually the cases that are restraining contact between a parent and the minor, or the child was taken out of the home, or they want the parents to complete services and the parents may not want to. Out-of-home placement services such as foster care or residential treatment, and reasonable efforts to reunify the family when a child must be removed from his or her home for reasons of safety, and services to facilitate adoption or other permanent placement if family reunification is not possible. Adoption and adoption day. Adoption requires determination of parental rights by court. Case processing is handled by county surrogates, heard before a family court judge. After the adoption is finalized, the child has the same legal status as a natural child of the parents. Every year, National Adoption Day is celebrated on the Saturday before Thanksgiving. It is a collective effort to raise awareness of the thousands of children waiting to be adopted from foster care in the U.S. These are a few pictures from National Adoption Day. It is a very happy day here in the courthouse, most of all for the family division, because we do usually get to see other things going on. We don't really get too much happiness, but it's nice to see the children come in. We have like a Build-A-Bear station, things like that. And as you can see, we also dress up for the kids. You can see court staff, and they're dressed up as different things. We have Elsa and things like that. I dressed as an elf last year, so next slide. Okay, so now is the Q&A.
Okay, so if you do have any questions, you can submit them. Once again, you would have to open up the Q&A function. You should see it either at the bottom of your screen or at the top of your screen, depending on how you're accessing today's Zoom session. We'll give it a moment. And we'll give it a moment to see if any questions pop up before we move on and wrap for today's session. Okay, I'm not seeing any questions populate. So if you do have any questions, I'll keep an eye on it, but we're going to move on to the next slide. So we just want to say thank you for watching today's session, and thank you to our subject matter expert, Daniela Moreno Escobar, and our Spanish interpreter. We do apologize for the tech issue, sometimes working things to make sure that we are providing access to, in this case, limited English proficient court users. Sometimes we have hiccups and in other circumstances. So we thank you for bearing with us through that. And so we would love to receive feedback on this program. You can use the QR code on your screen. Please take a moment to answer a brief survey about today's program. You'll also receive the link via email after this session ends, as well as a flyer for the remaining webinar topics. If you're looking for more information on this series, please contact the Office of the Ombudsman. That's our email address shown on the screen. And we just want to say thank you all. And oh wait, we do have one question. Okay. Does DCPMP have an ombudsman? Daniela, do you know?
So I would say, I don't know if they're called ombudsman. I do know that since DCPMP is a separate entity from the court, they are both state agencies, but they're an extremely separate entity from the court. They have the Office of Parental Advocacy. So there are times where parents feel concerns or that they're not being treated fairly, things like that, and they do reach out to the Office of Parental Advocacy, which is not part of that local office. I think it's in Trenton.
Okay. Thank you. And I don't see any other questions. So once again, we just want to thank you all. That concludes today's event. And as I mentioned, you'll receive an email follow-up with the survey and information about the upcoming webinars. Thank you.
Thank you.